Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Building a Better Britain. My name's Ummar and one of the things that we're going to explore today is some of the challenges that the UK has as a whole. Now, we've heard on the news and we've heard, people talking about some of the things around the economic position, interest rates, the volatility in the markets and these sorts of things. But what is it that are the fundamental problems, the fundamental factors, and more importantly, what can we do to try and tackle some of these issues? Well, with regards to the economy, we know that the economy has taken a big hit. We know that it's certainly in the last 2 years been on a trajectory which has questioned whether it were still an attractive market for foreign investors. And that started in 2022, just as we were coming back after the COVID-19 pandemic. We had a switch in leadership where the Prime Minister stepped down and Liz Truss at the time replaced him, and during that, I think, 44-day period of her premiership, we saw the biggest spike certainly in the last decade prior to that for things like construction inflation, interest rates, and that sort of thing. But what that really meant is that projects that had been up until that point full steam ahead, large-scale regeneration projects that would have created hundreds and thousands of jobs in towns and cities up and down the UK were all of a sudden stalled because they were no longer viable. We have, thankfully, started to come out of that now when things have settled in the last couple of years and projects are starting to move. But one of the things that I've worked on for the last 10, 12 years is attracting foreign investment. And as I've mentioned in the previous video, I've secured £8 billion worth of investment into the UK. That's capital investment and foreign direct investment. And I think sometimes people don't realise the benefits of attracting foreign investment. They're very quick to say that we shouldn't be investing in other countries and other countries shouldn't really be putting their capital into the UK. But the benefits, the very real benefits of foreign direct investment and capital investment is that we can create tens of thousands of new high-paid, high-skilled jobs for the UK. We can create new regeneration projects, we can create new buildings, we can create a new level of wealth for generations to come. And certainly sectors like the real estate sector, like infrastructure, like tech, digital, these are 4 key sectors that are emerging faster than anything I've ever seen before. So with regards to real estate, data centers, for example, are a new asset class in their own right. So I've mentioned before that, there's been more data stored in the last 12 to 18 months than all of time combined before that. And that's set to increase even more so with the advent of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So it's important that we can try and find suitable sites for these data centers so that we're not reliant on other countries to store our data and that we can control that. So I'm working on some of the largest data center opportunities in the UK at the minute. I've been advising some very key clients, both in the public and private sector. And I'm really excited to say that we're moving forward with data centers on many fronts at the minute, which is really good to see. We're also, as a byproduct of that, or a direct result of that, creating high-paid jobs that are future-proofed. There's all this talk about AI, meaning that millions of jobs up and down the UK will no longer be required in years to come. That's very true. There's no doubt about that. And we've seen that by going to airports and supermarkets that, where there was once upon a time somebody there to help us, we're now dealing with a machine. So this isn't new. We're aware of that. But what people aren't talking about are the new jobs that are going to be coming to replace that. Very much around tech and digital. And the UK government in the last few years, certainly the governments that I've worked for and worked with, have been very keen to make the UK the tech and digital superpower of the world. It's fine to make bold claims like that, but how do you truly follow that through? Well, we're going to look at that throughout this series and we're going to continue to talk about that. Now, for every project that we deliver, and we've delivered and we've worked on in the UK, we've delivered thousands of new jobs. And it's important that we continue that momentum, because by doing that, what we're doing is we're creating economic prosperity up and down the UK in towns and cities that aren't your major hubs. So, your towns and cities that need the jobs, that have a direct impact on their local economy. FDI, it's foreign direct investment, which means that we are attracting big business. So we want to see the big manufacturing companies come into the UK. We want to see things like carbon fibre being produced in the UK. We want to see things like people like Microsoft and Google and Amazon's. We want to see them come into the UK. We want to see them setting up and headquartering themselves for their Europe and UK operations here in this country. And that's very much what we're focused on. We want to strengthen our trade relationships, because I think one of the biggest challenges that we've come across in recent years has been the damage that Brexit has done. You know, whether you voted for Brexit or not, this isn't political. You know, you voted with the best intentions based on information you had at the time. But unfortunately, the way that's been handled in the last 5 years or so has meant that we've got some serious work to do to rebuild relationships with some of our European partners, particularly on the mainland continent. Regional disparities are another big challenge that I've often talked about, and that's sometimes people are disadvantaged by where they live. You know, so if you live in places like Manchester, Birmingham, London, Edinburgh, Leeds, some of the big cities in the UK, then you already have proximity to some of the best opportunities that the country has to offer. Versus where I live, for example, in the northeast of England, most of my life has been very much around having to find opportunities elsewhere. So while I was advising government, I was working in London for 6 years whilst living in the northeast of England, which meant travelling, and that isn't really ideal. So it's important that we look at creating opportunities here in places like Teesside, places like Middlesbrough, attracting businesses to this area, accelerating regeneration programs, making sure that the councils and the local authorities, the combined authorities, are forward thinking. Many public sector bodies are quite risk averse, which has been quite challenging, and they're not really aware of what their capabilities are, how they can plug viability gaps, how they can directly appoint development partners without very expensive, long procurement processes. All these things the local authority has the capability to do, but quite often does not do. So we're working with local authorities up and down the country, 25 in particular, and we've worked on some very challenging schemes and got them going by just creating partnerships and thinking a little bit more collaboratively. Housing is one of the biggest challenges as well. You know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs talks about, you know, your self-actualization right at the top, but it also talks about building that foundation that everybody needs in order for them to thrive. And that starts by having good quality grounding and having housing. The UK and England in particular needs 3.5 million houses built every year for the next 10 years just to keep up with demand. And we've got some significant challenges around that. So we've created some quite innovative partnerships with some public sector bodies, which will see retrofitting of existing buildings, which will see permitted development rights of commercial offices, which means that the planning process is a lot quicker, which means that we can start to deliver good quality affordable housing well above the national spatial standards, with Wi-Fi, with furniture, making sure people are digitally included, making sure that the energy bills are as low as possible, making sure that they've got access to renewable energy, access to employment, access to infrastructure and transport links as well. So we're working on several projects up and down the UK, and we've got about 1,000 houses planned in the next 3 to 5 years already in the pipeline, which is set to increase to maybe double that. Another big challenge the UK has is a skills gap shortage. We have, without a doubt, produced some of the best engineers, for example, in the world. We train them, we produce them, we upskill them, and then quite often they'll disappear to other parts of the world. And we need to look at how we can attract that talent back, but more importantly, retain that talent. So we've got some of the best training facilities and some of the best universities in the world. But what we're seeing is that the towns and cities where these universities are struggling to keep their students because the opportunities aren't here. So once they graduate, they're off. So it's important that we start to plug that gap much earlier and make sure that industry, whether it's tech, whether it's digital, real estate, infrastructure, professional services, whatever that might be, are tied into the training facilities, the universities and the colleges much earlier to make sure that there's a clear pathway into employment right there on their doorstep. And a lot of this is attributed to investment. Everybody wants large-scale regeneration. Everybody wants to create new opportunities, retain talent, have big business come into their towns and cities. But the reality is that starts with place, it starts with accommodation, it starts with office space, labs, incubation space, startups. You know, how can we encourage people to start their own business? How can we encourage people to relocate their big business to towns and cities like Middlesbrough and Tees Valley? Well, you can start by repurposing existing assets from the local authority. You can start by accelerating planning processes. We've seen that the combined authority for the Tees Valley have created mayoral development corporations, which is set to increase the speed of planning. Unfortunately, for Middlesbrough in particular, it's delayed planning for one reason or another. So it's about being more innovative and trying to accelerate things and making sure that there's reassurance that if big business does come to towns and cities like here in the northeast, that they're going to be supported by the public sector, that the skills are here, that there's going to be future talent, business rates. You know, what can you do to try and make it more attractive? Otherwise, what we're going to keep seeing are these businesses going to places like London, Paris, Berlin, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago. And we can't keep having that. We can't keep having this two-tier system. We've seen attempts to try to tackle the levelling up agenda, which has failed miserably in my opinion. We've had several ministers, several secretaries of state with that portfolio. But the reality is they've had a few initiatives, but they haven't really done anything with that. HS2 is a prime example. You know, I can get from the Tees Valley to central London in just over 2 hours. That's fine, I'm comfortable with that. HS2, HS3 would have allowed maybe that to happen 30 minutes quicker. That's not really going to have a big impact on me or big businesses. But what I'm keen to do is get to Manchester quicker, get from Newcastle to Leeds quicker, get from Manchester to Leeds to York quicker, because at the minute, them rail links are absolutely terrible. And I can get to London quicker than I can get to Manchester. So these things need to be considered to allow businesses to have the confidence to come to the UK. And I think one of the biggest challenges that we're going to see in the coming 12, 18 months is the capital. We need billions of pounds of capital coming into the UK. We need the projects and we need the pipeline. The UK needs to demonstrate that it has the opportunities that it can match with the funds. You know, it's not just about the opportunities, it's not just about the funds, it's about having the right opportunities in the right places, talking to the funds wherever in the world they are. And then it's about the deliverability. So I call this a triangle of success, where you've got your local authority, for example, that may have the land, you with the opportunity, but haven't got the ability to deliver. You've got your funds that haven't got the opportunity or delivery capability, but have got the funds. And then you've got your delivery partner who hasn't got the opportunity or the funds necessarily, but all three of them together, you create an opportunity that's quite compelling. And those three don't always talk to one another. And that's, again, a lot of the work that we focused on, is bringing all of those parties together. In the next episode, we're going to be talking about some very real examples of projects that we've worked on and that we are working on, to talk through how this can be done, best practice, how to navigate some of the barriers and challenges, and hopefully how you can start to think about your town and city and how we can take that to the global investment market, attracting businesses and foreign capital. Thank you.